Are we? We're recording.
Oh, we're in.
Oh my gosh. Okay, let's get started then. The Indian Council is in session. Welcome. This is a place for the leading voices from across the industry to gather to talk news, titles, and everything indie. I'm your master of ceremony, Jill Grote, the Indie Informer. But joining the council today are PR extraordinaire and 6-1 Indies creative director, Mike Towndrow.
Happy Goobies Week, everybody.
To all who celebrate.
To all three of us who celebrate.
Prolific game critic as seen on MinMax, Kinda Funny, and Pen to Pixels, Janet Garcia.
Hello.
And the illustrious producer at Soft Not Week, influencer manager at Kepler Interactive, streamer, and host of Wholesome Games, Jenny Windom.
Wahoo. Happy to be here.
Great start. Let's go ahead and get that energy in there, and let's head on into news because
I know it feels so formal.
know.
You know, I'm like, ooh.
It's episode 1. We're very formal. We've got to shake off the cobwebs. We're all learning each other.
Yeah. Oh, ooh.
That's a bad start. Just move on. It's 10 p.m. for me.
We're doing great, you guys. Yeah. Everyone else, just so you know, everyone here, 3 of us are on the West Coast and 1 of us is on the East Coast, and it might show which one it is.
Don't attack me 3 minutes in.
All right. I love you.
Love you too.
So over the last week, we had 2 major indie showcases, and we're going to dive into them, but we're going to dive in a little differently. I know everybody has heard about the announcements, heard about the games. Let's talk about the actual showcases themselves. So starting with ID at Xbox, it is their 10th annual show, which means ID at Xbox has been around for 10 years, which is great. And they also put on a demo fest, which unfortunately at the time people are probably seeing this, it's probably over, but I hope you had a great time playing all the demos. But I do want to check out a little looking back at 10 years of ID at Xbox as written by ID at Xbox, just to get an idea of what they do and why they exist. So it says, over the summer of 2013, we worked hard to develop a new program at Xbox, one that would address the needs of developers, indie developers, in 2013, as well as be able to be able to grow to address the continually changing and growing needs of the indie dev community. The program, after changing names 3 times in the week before we announced it at Gamescom, was ID at Xbox, and we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year. I don't ever like to declare success, especially when I see how much more we have to do, but 10 years, I think we've done a pretty good job so far with ID at Xbox. We've enabled more than 3,000 games to ship on Xbox from independent developers, more than the total number of games that released on the original Xbox and Xbox 360 combined. Onboarded more than 5,000 developers into the program, and paid developers more than $4 billion. And that's even before we talk about Game Pass. So that's a lot of dollars.
A lot of dollars.
That is, and they just started a new program for underappreciated. What is the exact word? I need to look it up.
I think underrepresented, marginalized, potentially.
Yeah,
underrepresented groups of developers who are now being kind of fast-tracked into getting their stuff shown and getting out there in the world. And so the ID at Xbox branding, the actual program itself, has been around for a really long time, and it's surprising how many people to me don't know about it. But yeah, these showcases are brilliant, and they happen every year. But I know that Mike has an opinion on the showcase as it went out last week. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. We're just going to establish me as the curmudgeon of the group. Hated indie boy of the group. Well, first off, I do want to commend ID at Xbox in general. I think Xbox and the ID at Xbox program and the team over there are doing it right. Like between the program they recently released with or announced with the underappreciated developers, just all the support they've given over the years. I mean, like, even just looking back at 2008 Summer of Arcade, which they highlight, like launching with Castle Crashers, Braid, and Geometry Wars, like banger. Like they know what games to eye and like how to curate indie lists. It's really great. But their showcases drive me up the wall quite a bit. I think they're like something about showcases. I'm trying to like be as nice as humanly possible. I have a really keen eye for like showcase production and pacing, and like something I could commend folks like Jen with Wholesome, like the pacing of Wholesome showcases and the mix. And I'm gonna pat ourselves on the back a little bit with the 6-1 showcases.
This is true.
We know how to pace a show. We know how to highlight games. We know how to not have games step on each other's toes. I don't think Xbox has figured out how to do that yet. I appreciate the deep dive into games. I appreciate developer interviews and gameplay segments, all that kind of stuff. You can't have a 2-hour show for that, because a lot of people like us, especially folks who like media folks and content creators who want to live react to the shows, who want to cover the shows and whatnot. We don't have 2 hours in our day to like sit and like really watch a long gameplay segment. Like if that's a post show thing, if that's something that you're going to post on your channel afterwards, hell yeah, I'm all in. That's incredible. But just show me the game, show me the trailers, show me the hook that makes the game interesting. And I think you know, putting it all together, like what was it, like 20 games in like a 2-hour show, doing that, it only puts detriment to the games. And like I'm not going to remember game number 1 that was shown at 2:00 when the show is ending at 4:00, you know.
Not only that, it was it was not definitively ended, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it just seems like it seems like they really need to find that structure, that pacing, that run of show. Like they need to, like, I joke about it a lot, especially with I love harping on PlayStation also about this stuff, because their PlayStation blog posts about indie games at 7:00 in the morning drive me up the goddamn wall also.
You're not clicking the embedded links at the bottom to go to each of the pages?
You know how much I love those embedded links. Like they really need to like talk to somebody like Jen, like myself, like Greg Rice, or like, because like the Day of the Dev show also, I think like one of the gold standards of indie showcases. Like just legit just copy what we're doing and you're gonna have a banger of a show. It just drives me crazy, like production wise. Outside of the showcases, I think ID at Xbox is doing everything right. I think they are, as far as first party stuff goes, I think they are the best at what they're doing as far as indie support goes. Like I appreciate the Indie World Directs from Nintendo, and PlayStation has a lot of stuff to fix. I love Shu and the team to death, but PlayStation has some stuff to fix also.
I mean, just so that you're not alone in your I don't know what you'd call this, like dark pedestal or something. I don't know, your throne of hatred,
throne of skulls.
I mean, I totally agree with that too. It is wild, Jill, you're bringing up that it's 10 years ID at Xbox. Like I think too, when you think of like how young games are and everything, it's like, wow, that's such a long time to be running a program like that. And I would totally agree. I think Xbox has done a great job at sort of gaining a real foothold in the indie space. Obviously, indie will always be kind of dominated by PC inherently because of ease of kind of just, I can just post it now. That platform offers things that consoles can't and aren't really quite able to in the same way. But ID at Xbox as an identity, and combined with Game Pass and the power of Game Pass, has really created this, highlighted Xbox as a tastemaker in the space. I think a lot of times when there's like a fire indie, whether it's launching day and date on like console and PC, which is a little bit rare, or whether it's was on PC and it came to console, I'd say 8 times out of 10, I feel like it's coming to Xbox. I do think Nintendo had a foothold for a while as well, especially being a handheld console. But so often I'm looking, someone that is on a PlayStation podcast over it, Kind of Funny. It's like I'm looking across the water and I'm like, oh, it'd be great to be able to talk about those games and to bring those games to that PlayStation audience. And so often when I think about who's taste making in the console space, Xbox does really dominate that. But yes, the showcase is very long. I was looking it up today where I'm like, okay, I want to try to like prep for, let me try to like prep for the show a little bit more. And I'm like, and not just the 2-hour showcase, it's 2:40 when you add like the 40-minute pre-show. Like that pre-show is longer than most people's shows.
Yeah.
And it's such a weird mix of, I think too, you really have to think about like who's your audience in these cases, which it'll be interesting seeing, the people that end up listening to this and sort of what their background is in the indie space, because so much of like the ID at Xbox showcases is a weird smattering of like game you already know and you already love, and it has like a new skin or something, which is fine. Like that's fair to still be promoting your game, but then it's like mixed in with like game you never heard about but actually came out 9 months ago, and I'm like, it's kind of smattered in a lot of different spots where it's like, is this for someone who maybe doesn't know the space at all? So maybe it doesn't, fit me as much. And you kind of end up a little bit fish out of water because they don't do smaller, more thematic kind of drops. But here's the next 10 years, like I'm sure they'll get,
10 years.
I know they'll have a lot of evolution in that time. And I'm excited to see what they see as the future and them having, forgive me, what's the name of the program again? The one that's for underrepresented developers.
Blanking on it.
Yeah, I know. I need to look that up.
Well, someone grabs that. Like, I think that's kind of, to me, that's a look into the future of what they see as, okay, here's the next step we can take in the space to, push things forward as not just like indie tastemakers, but also people supporting people making their games.
It is the ID at Xbox Developer Acceleration Program.
Yeah.
No way.
That is very creative.
Yes.
So they need to work on that a little
I mean,
bit.
if you want to abbreviate it,
like.
the IDXDAPS. There you go.
Yeah, you down with XDPASC? You know me? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love that.
But I think you're right. The next, because what we have right now, just the showcases in general, is like everyone is doing a showcase. Like, and the thing that's going to start differentiating showcases and allowing them to stand out is that curatorial aspect. And so I think what's going to be really important and hopefully exciting, because they're going to do this and see in the future, is the ways, like you said, Janet, Xbox actually curates their showcases and specifies what they're highlighting in each one, because then as an audience we can get excited, because it was a bit overwhelming when I went to the video and I saw it was like 2.5, almost 3 hours if you're including everything, and I was like, what's here for me? I have no idea. And it does kind of just like run the gamut, where I think one of the strength, like just a little bit of a pat on the back, I suppose, is like strengths of smaller showcases, whether it's something like Wholesome or 6-1 Indie or like the what is it, the horror like game,
PS1, yeah. Haunted PS1.
The specificity allows people to actually come in and know what they're getting and know what they're expecting and feel like they're getting what they came for. And I think that's what's going to have to happen with these major showcases, is this understanding of like, what is our audience coming for and how can we best give it to them? Because otherwise you do end up with these just like things that sort of give you the whole kitchen sink and you're like, I don't know if I want the kitchen sink.
Right. 100%. I love, go ahead.
No, just real quick. I think Jen, you nailed it on the head. Like, I think, yes, there are like showcases nowadays are a dime a dozen where like everybody's doing them, but what makes us not stand on top of each other is that we're all serving a different niche of the indie space. Like Wholesome is clearly delivering like cozy ass games, and all of them are remarkable. I don't know how you curate those kind of shows. It blows my mind. Like with 6-1, we prominently like after being in the PR world for a little bit, like I know some of the pricing for like some things like the PC gaming show and the Game Awards and stuff like that. Like we want to provide like a zero barriers of entry kind of show where like if you are a single developer, like a solo developer creating a small ass itch.io game, we want to show off your game. No gatekeeping, you're good. Same with like the Mix. Like the Mix has an affordable cost for a Steam feature and a physical feature, or I should say a physical event feature. So yeah, I hope some of the big guys understand the importance of having a voice and having a curation. Yes, like it's important to show off indies. It's important for a first party publisher to support the indie space, but indie as a general concept can't be like the subject line of an email. Like you need to have some form of curation to it, or else you're gonna get a bunch of like generic nasty gamer comments of like, where's Hollow Knight Silksong, where's Hollow Knight Silksong.
Yeah, you're gonna get that anyway though.
That's the thing. But like yeah, it's just more curation is definitely needed, and timing also, knowing when to do these kind of things.
And speaking of amazing curation, let's jump into some of the things that we absolutely loved from the showcase, the games. So I'm going to jump in first and talk about Worldless, which I originally saw back at GDC this year. It is a sort of Metroidvania made by one of the developers who also worked on Gree. So you have a lot of visual connections to that game as well, and sort of a very limited storytelling method. It is visually just compelling, and it is a lot of fun to play. And I got to play through sort of the first world. It is this very abstract kind of, your character is basically a stick figure, and you get more corporeal as you start to fight, which is a really cool and interesting concept to think about. Like, who is this person and why are they more a person when they begin to fight? And the combat is not, it is turned based, but not sort of in a traditional sense. You are attacking, and the opponent is trying to deflect the kind of attack that you are attacking with, and vice versa. When they attack, you try to like immediately see, like, is this a physical attack? And if it is, I block with my shield, but if it's a magic attack, then I block with magic. But it's all within seconds of everything happening, so it's this beautiful back and forth. And then you can absorb your enemies instead of defeating them,
Same.
and you get like abilities out of that. It's all really cool and conceptual, and I just absolutely love this sort of game. So I'm really happy to see it on ID at Xbox. We're talking about curation and how important that is for the branding, but also just having this particular game show up at ID at Xbox and have that Xbox backing makes me so excited, because I loved this game as soon as I put the controller down, and I wanted more people to know about it. And it's very hard to get the word out about a game that people may not have ever seen or ever have known about, even though that is, I think, the goal of all of us here, is to get that word out more. But the Xbox brand has such reach that it's just amazing to see something that you're rooting for show up and have people get excited about it. Did anybody else have anything at the showcase that they were just really happy to see?
Yeah, I kind of want to shout out Birth, even though I feel like it's weird for me to shout out this game because it's part of my, like, what is the ongoing indie pile of shame of, like, I've been looking at this game from afar, and it's like, if you just play it,
Janet,
go ahead.
You would fucking love this game. It's so
I know.
fucking good.
It's so cool.
Good.
So, funnily enough, like, I have, again, weirdly been, like, watching this game, and then I'm like, oh, man, it's out. And which, you know, hopefully this podcast also kind of serves as keeping people updated on when stuff's dropping and things, because it's so hard to follow everything. But this is a game developed by Madison Carr? Is that how you pronounce their last name? And I remembered this game because I tweeted June 2022, Madison Carr from Chicago, do your thing, hashtag Day of the Devs. So that's when I first saw it, because I saw that they were from Chicago and I'm from Chicago, and I was like, yeah, and they're like out here making like weird, creepy, cute stuff, and I'm like, that's my jam. So if you're not familiar, Birth is an adventure puzzle game where you're sort of constructing, I guess, a friend from his bare bones and organs, you know, that you find around the city as you kind of like meander around like the loneliness of your life. And I don't know, it says a lot that this is my first pick of a game. The puzzles are sort of like physics based, and what's really charming to me is it has this really beautiful hand-drawn art style of, you know, you're going to like bookstores and museums, and it all feels very like delicate, but also doom and gloom, but with kind of almost like a muted, almost like a muted pastel look. It kind of has a lot of like beiges and like earthy tones. It kind of feels like cottagecore meets death meets unpacking, or a little to the left, like those kind of quaint, like you're manipulating things in the space. It actually came out earlier this year, so I'm going to justify finally playing it, because I'm like, this is a 2023 game that I need to pay attention to, but it's dropping on Xbox next. Right now it's just on Mac and PC, but I thought that was cool to kind of see that come around again. And this is like a self-developed, self-published game, but it's worth noting that Madison Carr did have a degree of a publishing partner through Wingers Interactive, which actually funds indie games by women and marginalized gender developers. So if you're, you know, out there looking to get your game made and you are part of those groups, it could be a place worth looking at. Or if you're maybe just looking for, you know, more games from women or like other gender developers, like that could be a cool spot to check out, because I was kind of surprised to see like, oh, they have like this. I think a lot of times when you self-publish and have that additional partner, it's like, okay, what's their role and where are they in the space? So it was cool to see that, they kind of worked and reached out and got that funding and made their game happen. And they've been, promoting it and bringing it around from place to place. And I'm finally going to pick up my sticks and
Good.
play this game.
Please do. Yeah, just to kind of reinforce what Janet said, like legit, like Birth is one of my favorite games of the year so far, and it was heavily
Nice.
slept on for the first half of the year because of how busy 2023 is with major releases. Haha, Zelda. So yeah, I'm glad it's getting a second breath of fresh air. That's not the phrase. A second life on Xbox next week. Another birth. It's getting a rebirth on Xbox.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
That's be
coming
confused
out
with Binding of Isaac Rebirth.
Yes.
Yeah. God.
That's coming out July 28th for anybody who's interested. Which I am unfortunately on the Janet side of things, where everyone I've heard talk about this game loves this game. So I need to catch up with it.
I met Madison, and well, we were talking back and forth online since like the game was announced, but I met her at PAX East, and I
Nice.
sort of promised her that I would get one of her characters tattooed on me. I still owe Madison that tattoo.
That's amazing.
You wouldn't be the only one, because I was lurking on her Twitter page and I saw like she like quote tweets someone who I think also got a tattoo.
Dude,
so
her art is just so
line up.
fucking cool. Yeah, it's just really cool. It's like I think I described it as if Tim Burton went art house. That's kind of what it looks like.
I like it.
That's a good description.
Is there, Mike, did you want to shout anything out from the show specifically?
I mean, Janet stole my answers, but I'll do my backups. I do want to shout out Stray Souls because I am a big spoopy boy. I'm a big horror boy. I like, a lot of like first person horror games are a dime a dozen. Just ever since the whole PT craze, I like that somebody is doing the Resident Evil style games, the Silent Hill type of games, that third person horror, and like that, I don't know, that like kind of authentic take on that PS2, PS1 era survival horror. Obviously, like the big shout out here is that they tapped Akira Yamaoka to compose the score, to guest compose some of the pieces. Akira did some work on Silent Hill back in the day. And if you tie any Silent Hill folks to a video game, I will play it. And I'm very excited for it. It looks very spoopy. It looks very creepy. I like that. Yeah, it's just a new spin on kind of that third person survival horror that I fell in love with back in the day with Resi and Silent Hill, and hopefully it hits. It's very easy to mess these kind of games up, but from what I've seen and what I've heard from folks, it seems like they're doing the damn thing. And yeah, I'm ready to step away from like the first person like PT like games for a bit. Like a little too many of them. A lot of them are mostly, not to be mean, but a lot of them are just like kind of showpieces, a couple jump scares, and there's not a lot of substance to them. It seems like Stray Souls feels a little more fleshed out than those experiences. So very excited.
Yeah.
Look at that lady.
I'm excited you're excited.
Yeah.
Because as soon as that popped up, I wrote in my notebook, just nope.
You don't want to meet this lady with her claws?
Yeah, no, I think I'll be okay. Like, I love that the indie space is a space that has something for everybody. And that means that not everything is for me, and that's great. But eventually I'm afraid someone's going to make me play one of these scary games. So maybe I shouldn't have said that on
We should sit down
podcasts.
together. Okay, we're going to sit down together and play through Stray Souls.
No.
Yes. It's a stream. No. That's an indie informer.
You can't make me. Jenny, what was your favorite?
Oh gosh, I had a sort of tie between two. The first was Sea of Stars. I've just been excited for Sea of Stars for years. I do have to like put in a disclosure that Sea of Stars received funding from Kowloon Knights, and I'm an advisor there. But I was like so hyped for that game before I was even a part of Kowloon Knights, so wanted to just put that out there for that disclosure. But basically, it's like this beautiful homage to sort of classic JRPGs like Chrono Trigger, Secret of Mana, like that era of SNES RPGs. And it's set in the world of The Messenger, which I think is really cool because The Messenger was a totally different genre and art style. So I love that the team is really pushing themselves to not only go back into this world that they've already created, but to do so in a different form within games is just really exciting. And I love that they're pushing themselves in that way. It just looks beautiful, like vibrant and lush and colorful. And I've been just itching for a vibrant, lush RPG to play. I know everyone's like, but Final Fantasy 16, and I'm like, yes, I will play it, but it's just so dark and medieval,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and I want like a Final Fantasy 10 vibe, and this has that Final Fantasy 10 lush vibe that I'm really excited about. Um, and then the other one, which I was so happy to see because I did not expect it, it was a really pleasant surprise, was Solace State. This one's being published by Vivid Foundry, self-published, and it's a great team of marginalized developers who've been working on this like dystopic narrative game where you're fighting a corporation, a biotech company. And so you're playing this activist who has to grapple with the moral, like personal morals that she has, and then the activist cause that she's fighting for. And like that struggle is just really inherently exciting and interesting to me. I love that it's a visual novel in its format with choices that I think will impact how the novel unfolds and how the story unfolds. It was just cool because you don't often see really narrative heavy games get platform like on an Xbox showcase. And so I was not only excited to see it because the game looks really good, but to see Xbox also highlighting a very narrative heavy game with like really, I think, just relevant themes for today was
Mhm.
really cool. So a definite shout out to Solace State there. That was a really fun thing to see that it's coming. I think it said Q3.
I think
Um,
so.
Yeah.
somewhere. It's later this year.
Yeah, I think Citizen Sleeper kicked the doors down for more narrative
Yes.
games to get like
Hmm.
mainstream amplification, which
Yeah.
obviously like appropriately so because Citizen Sleeper rules.
Was amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so good.
The art of Solid State is so intriguing. Like every time I
Hmm.
see it, it feels like I'm looking at it for the first time. It looks like if Banksy was a consultant on this game. Like I just love like the way where the camera movement kind of like manipulates your point of view and like how it unveils the characters as you're going scene by scene.
Hmm.
I just something I've never seen done before.
Yeah, it's like really specific in exactly what it wants you to see and how it
Yeah,
frames
exactly.
everything.
And
And
I'm
I
excited to
think,
see how that plays into the narrative.
yeah, I think that's really cool. And it always excites me when a game has that specificity because then then you know that the developer is like really really wanting you to get something out of like that moment. And I think that's always really fun to also play and think about.
Absolutely. And from one showcase to the other, we had another big indie showcase, which was the limited runs game showcase. And I'm not gonna lie, these are not showcases usually that I get super excited about. Um, if for anybody who doesn't know, limited run games takes a usually indie, but not always, a game that would be hard to get a physical copy of and makes usual physical releases of things. And their showcases are therefore usually less news than just like, oh, I like this game and it's cool that this is something I can get in a physical kind of form. But this time around, there were some definite things I was not ready for. I think, Mike, you have the most written on the dock here. So I'm going to assume that you had a great time with this showcase.
Sorry, I'm
Limited
looking at the doc and I'm like, the fact that plumbers don't wear ties is on here.
Yo.
I really gotta hear about this.
Listen, it's been one of my most anticipated releases for like years now. I can't fucking wait for Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. Yeah, the limited run showcase is a favorite of 6-1 Indies. It's a time where me and my another co-founder Kyle gets to bond and have our wallets at the ready and just get ready just to drop like hundreds on the spot on a dime. Thankfully, that did not happen at during the showcase because things were announced for a future date. No, I love that limited run just knows their audience and they know their niche. They always put on
Mhm.
such weird and absurd presentations.
Yes.
Um, and they you never know what to expect. Like you couldn't I don't know. I couldn't bet anything to guess correctly that they would end with the Gex trilogy coming back. I've never screamed so loud in my life when the Gex reveal happened. I legitimately hurt myself when Gex, like, I thought it was just going to be GoldenEye coming to physical because
Yes.
GoldenEye has been
The
re-released
sound,
and all that
yeah.
stuff. So
They
many guys,
definitely
oh,
led into that. They were like
and
playing the
it's so
soundtrack
good.
and yes.
But yeah, I could go on and on. But like the greatest things like were, yes, plumbers don't wear ties. I guess kind of re-revealed that. I think they first unveiled it during lockdown, maybe. But it got re-revealed. It's coming in 2023. I love that it was fleshed out a little more with a documentary, just to go over what the fuck this game is. FMVs have a very near and dear spot in my heart, and I think this is just it's an FMV for the simple man like myself. And I'm very excited to experience how trash this game probably is and how absurd it is, but it probably has a lot of heart. And I'm excited to just dig into like a lot of those interviews and just to see just to really know what the story behind this production was and how it was made.
So really quick,
Yeah.
like, can you flesh out like what is this? So for me, like I saw this like hitting on my feed, you know, on my feed, like people were like talking about like the things they're excited about from Limited Run,
Sure.
and I saw plumbers don't wear ties. I guess again the episode disclosure is I'm friends with Kelsey Lewin and she has credits in that game. She's like, oh, my first credits in a game.
Oh, yeah, I saw
and yes, and I'm like, okay, like, and then people, it was like it's like this weird like tapestry of like really specific hype, but then also when you search, like I searched like plumbers because I'm like, what is this? Like I'm an FMV fan too, but you know, like I didn't catch everything that's like ever come out, so
Right.
I searched it and people were like, oh, why do they like do this? And then some people were like, I can't believe they find. So what is the back of the box here for this thing? What am I looking at here?
I have not played it, but from what I heard, it's an adult rom-com.
Okay.
If I have to give you one little tagline, it's an adult rom-com that was kind of lost to time. I believe it was released around the time I was born. I think it was either like 91, 92, something like that for PC. And yeah, it was just critically just like bashed and just got like just totally lost and like people kind of forgot about it. And then it got this resurgence with the limited run announcement. I think it was during lockdown. It could have been the year after. And I think recently it got a bunch of hype just because of how absurd it looks. And I think there was like a lot of hype thanks to limited run bringing Night Trap back, and obviously there's things like Wales Unlimited. Is it? No, Wales Interactive. Thank you. Putting things.
I'm right there in the trash with you. You know, I was playing. I was playing Night Trap. Like I forgot what year it was that I bought it on Switch, and I was playing it like on New Year's Eve that year because that's the kind of person I am. And I was just like reading the guide, trying to finish it because it was so freaking hard.
So I think like with that new appreciation of things like 5 dates, 10 dates, Nightbook, Uncle, whatever, which was not great. I forgot the name of that game. I do think there's just more of an acceptance for these weird ass games, and just to see one get unearthed like 30 years later for modern audiences, I think is really cool. And I think that's kind of where the hype comes in.
Yeah. And speaking of absurdity, just to talk about the showcase for anybody who didn't see it, the whole framing of the showcase is that we went back in time to 1995 to E3 to save E3, and the conclusion was that Gex managed to do it. So E3 is saved.
He always does.
Does that make Gex the hero or the villain? Yeah. Like, you know, how do we look at this?
We'll see. And yeah, the absurdity could not be matched. And I love a good absurd game. The one thing that stood out to me was I don't remember the name off the top of my head actually, but the one that was like, what if you could play a Jane Austen game, but just slapping people? And I was like, what is this? I cannot wait to slap people. This is great. So
yeah, I forgot the name of it. It's a very long name.
Jane and Camellia, I think.
Camellia, some kind of flowery like name.
Yeah. I loved it because like the animation for it that they introed with was so good because it's like that 80s anime feel. So I was like, yes, I'm hooked. I'm here. I'm ready. And I did not, because I feel like I've maybe seen, because as soon as the slapping started, it like unlocked a memory for me of having seen it before, but I hadn't remembered it. So it was this weird surreal feeling. I was like, I think why is this so familiar?
Rose and Camellia collection.
Rose and Camellia collection. I'm ready for it. Give me a Rose, give me a Camellia. I'll slap the heck out of them.
And the Joy-Con support. That's very important. I'm very excited to finally play a motion Joy-Con game.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I feel like I'm just ready because if I need to use the straps because I can 100%. See myself just throwing my
flinging it into the TV.
Yeah.
Anybody else big fun things from the limited run games showcase?
I did not know about this game at all. It was called This Way Madness Lies.
Okay.
It
Mhm.
was like pixel art, which I love. I love pixel art so much. But then it had theater. It was like, but what if Shakespeare and magical girls combined? I was like, as a English nerd, theater kid, like magical girl fan, I was like, this is the game I never asked for, but somehow I've gotten it and I am so happy about it. I guess it's like you're a high school drama club and you have these 5 friends who just are going through Shakespeare's plays and fighting enemies within them. Just weird. I don't know. I don't really register more than that as I was watching the trailer. I was just excited
Got it.
because I was
That's it.
like,
Yeah.
this is just way too weirdly
That's all you need to know.
specific. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like, this is so weird, but I'm here for it. And I was looking it up on the Steam page, and what I loved even more is that the game itself is it bills itself as a bite-sized JRPG, so it's like really intentionally
Finally.
short. Yeah, I know. I'm like,
Only
So
20 hours.
Only I was gonna make the
Only.
same joke. Yes, we're both really original.
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm super excited. I'm like ready to play it. I saw that it was on Steam. Honestly, I might just pick it up tonight and play it on my Steam Deck because I was just very
Yeah.
excited when I was watching that showcase today in preparation for the show.
The dev's previous games, including Cthulhu Saves the World and Cthulhu Saves Christmas, fantastic bite-sized RPGs as well.
You could have said anything after Cthulhu, and I would have had to just accept that it was true.
Yeah.
Cannot recommend those enough.
I mean, I can't recommend them enough, and I haven't played them, so
I mean,
I'm
put
ready.
Cthulhu in anything. I'm down. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, especially if he's saving Christmas. I
It's
love
about
it.
time.
Somebody had to.
Some
The
yeah,
war
I
on
was gonna
Christmas
say
is
someone
finally
needs
over.
to have-
Okay, and we're moving on to the next section,
Well,
but we're
I
not
have
moving away from
Two
Oh,
quick things. Two quick
Two
things.
quick
I do want
things.
to give a special shout out to Clock Tower getting localized. That's a
Yeah.
really
Mhm.
renowned Japan only horror game that never came stateside. I think it's huge that it's coming. Sorry, 3 quick things. The second quick thing is our friends at the Mix are apparently developing 2
Yes.
licensed 95 games. I just want to put on the record that in my heart of hearts, I think it's Street Sharks and I think it's Freakazoid. And I really want a Street Sharks brawler. So
Okay.
Justin, make it happen.
You heard it here first. If he's wrong, he owes all of us a pizza.
And as if people watching could tell, I'm a vinyl sicko. I'm in financial ruin because of these TMNT records. There's
Yes.
9 of them coming out, 1 per month. Doing a little bit of research. The first one is $31.99. So $31.99 times 9, not including shipping and tax. That's $287.
Yeah.
I'm in trouble.
That's not bad. Why was I surprised by the result? I feel like I really don't know math. I was like,
Yeah.
what? I had no idea what number was coming next. I'll be honest with you.
The mental math does not compute in my head.
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
Honestly,
no.
you could have said $5,000, and we all would've shook
Exactly.
our head
I was like, what is this, like
wow,
2 grand?
yeah.
We're gamers, not
Um,
mathematicians.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to round it out, like limited run, talking about the idea of what is ID at Xbox's showcase outside of it being indie? Like, what's the other like motif? Like, limited run has like nothing and everything, but like people get it. It's a vibe. It's
Yeah.
like these are people that are so clearly pursuing their passions and built a community that is passionate around really specific
Mhm.
and really odd and also just like, I don't know, generally renowned games. It's a weird smattering of all those things. Like, only at like limited run could you have like, Midnight Fight Express has a physical release, and then also like Toomba, like this PS1 game that I played at my
That
cousin
was-
Brandon's house in
Uh-huh.
Wisconsin.
So
Uh-huh.
That was such a fun
You know,
announcement.
Yeah, and it's like it's such an like limited run for like I love physical stuff, but I don't usually buy stuff that I already like have owned. But I think it has this fun middle ground of being both a place for the physical version of indie titles and also the place for the resurrection of just older titles that almost like become indie in the publishing sense, but maybe not, it's like, okay, Toomba was published by Sony originally, but now it's kind of being dragged from the depths through this sort of small team and force making it happen and working together. So it's an interesting smattering of both those things, but excited to see Toomba back. I feel like there's a lot of retro platformers that are like sort of in that B list, but like the hidden gem platformers that like everyone knows the name, but like it wasn't Mario, so like maybe
Right.
you didn't play it. But
Right.
yeah, Toomba was a real fun time, and I don't even care if it's good. I'm just gonna play it and see. I'm gonna have fun. But yeah, excited to see that pop up over there.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
like I forgot what their engine is called, but like their tech to actually like easily port retro titles to modern audiences, I think is huge and important. Especially like there was that article recently that like was it like 9% of games from like the
Mhm.
PS3 360 era are playable, some shit like that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, they're really doing they are actively doing the damn thing when it comes to game preservation and
Yeah.
reviving some forgotten titles and even things such as Clock Tower that a lot of people have never played. Like I think it's really cool. And even on the
For
publishing
Toomba,
side,
it's the Carbon Engine. I think.
Carbon
At least
Engine,
that's what
thank you.
they
Yeah.
mentioned on Twitter.
which I thought was a joke, but it's an actual thing. Like the way they presented it, it sounded like a joke. Like oh, we're going into the Carbon Engine and reviving all these games. Like no, it's actual tech, and that's really
the actual
impressive.
thing. Mhm.
And yeah, it's just even like I know I keep saying one more thing. I just like limited run a lot. Even on the publishing side, like they announced Arzette and the Jeweled Faramore, which is like that take on like the Zelda
Yeah.
CDI games.
Yeah.
And something I was really hoping to see, and they haven't really talked about it widely yet. It had a Kickstarter campaign over lockdown. It's a FMV horror game called Ghosts that should be coming soon. It's essentially like it's kind of like Five Nights ish, but like you are the TV producer of like a haunted house show, and you're just kind of like monitoring all like these different monitors and camera feeds and stuff, and you have to just kind of like keep an eye on all the like live action FMV actresses and like and it all happens live. Like there is like a time like 10 p.m. on Tuesdays, like Ghost is going
Oh,
live, and
wow.
you actively play along with the actresses. It's really cool.
That sounds like a real nope.
It's a big yeah. It is from the writer of Host, the Shudder for horror film that was about the Zoom call.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, same writer.
Interesting. Okay.
Anyways,
Is there one more thing,
no,
Mike?
I'll shut up.
No? You good?
I'm
Are
sorry.
you sure?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Anybody else want to chip in before we go to our topic of the show? No? Okay. So we're not totally moving away from showcases because I found something very interesting during ID'd Xbox's pre-show, which was in itself very long. It had in it a definition of indie. And I don't know exactly if this definition comes from ID at Xbox or from the writers over at IGN, because IGN did present this showcase. So it might have been them who was writing the script. But I want to read this definition to everybody and then maybe we'll get more into not only what this definition, how it speaks to us, but how we define indie, what an indie actually is. So, with no further ado, according to the ID at Xbox showcase, an indie is a game developed by a smaller team, unlike the one you'd see on a AAA, and it has the absence of financial backing on the level of a AAA studio that a AAA studio can provide, will often result in more nuanced and creative approach to game development. So, as far as that definition goes, I'm extremely interested in the fact that they have chosen to compare each point of what an indie is as to its opposite uh, in the AAA space. So, this particular definition I find difficult to sort of agree with because it is defining indies by not being AAAs, if that makes sense. So does anybody have just a quick gut reaction to that particular definition, or does anybody want to jump into what their definition for indie usually is?
I think the money part, the budget part, while true, where does things like Annapurna and Devolver lie? Devolver, deep fucking pockets, and like, yeah, I think we all still sort of consider Devolver indie anyways. It's like that triple indie space, similar with Annapurna. Like they have, well, died for a while, but they have film studios back and whatnot. They just put out like that fantastic Netflix film. So like they also have the financial backing, but we still consider things like Maquette or Stray, an indie title. I mean, Stray winning Best Indie at the Game Awards, which when we get to December, y'all, I'm gonna go on my dark pedestal once again. So yeah,
Wait,
like
you have a dark pedestal about Stray?
no, about Game Awards in general,
Oh,
and
okay.
I have a
specifically,
dark
I
pedestal
was gonna
about
say I have
Stray.
a dark pedestal about Stray, but we can get into that in another
Oh,
time.
I'm gonna get into that.
Jenny hates cats.
You heard it here.
Oh God.
Breaking news, world exclusive. Yeah, it's just like the triple I stuff is just where like you get foggy territory. To answer your second question, there is like there is no definition for indie anymore. I mean, it's like what's indie music, what's indie films, like what's this, what's that. Like A24 is technically an independent like film studio, but A24 is fucking bankrolling nowadays. Um, I always consider it by the size of the team. Um, like sure, something like Cult of the Lamb has the backing and support of a big guy like Devolver. And granted, when I say big guy, I'm not saying like Devolver has like PlayStation or Xbox money or anything like that, but they're still a publicly traded company and they're doing pretty good for themselves. Um, but it's still like it still takes talent and manpower or person power to like really put out a quality product like Cult of the Lamb, and the fact that like a team of that size could put out such a banger is really impressive. No matter what the budget is, it still takes just talent and time and patience and having a good creative eye. So I always like kind of equate it to team size, like development team size, as opposed to financial stuff. Yeah.
Right.
Do you have a number in mind for what that team size is?
I don't know. Not really.
Yeah, me neither.
I know.
I just want, but I think it does become interesting where it's like, whenever you try to put anything in any form of a box, like by definition, like having something, you're kind of asking for like the denotative answer of indie. And I think the one that either ID at Xbox or IGN or kind of a combo of the two puts out, it's not wrong, but sure, there are a lot of like counter examples for it, or you could kind of split hairs on like, it is a little funny hearing that definition and kind of thinking of the, sometimes like more creative than like their AAA counterpart. And it's like, we're broken creative and y'all are just like rich and have no creativity. I'm not really a big fan of, I think, the sometimes I think overly harsh distinction about the idea of indies where the true artistry is, and it's like scrappy and like AAA, like the fidelity's there, but where's the heart? I don't really like sort of pitting, I think, the creativity of the two kind of against each other. I've played immensely incredible AAA games. I've played immensely incredible indie games, and I've played bad games from both of those specters, and I'll continue to, because that's just the process of trying things out. So, but yeah, I think generally the definition, it's you'll catch a lot of things in there, but you'll miss a few things here and there. I think I echo Mike's sort of team size thing, where it's like you can get maybe acquired by, we think of this with like Oxenfree, right? It's like, oh, the indie studio, they're, Night School, the indie studio, they're owned by Netflix. Like, it's like, yeah, that's a lot. But yeah, that team itself though is still relatively small. So I more so look at the size, I think, of those. And then of course there's, a bunch of AA, triple I. It's like, I don't know.
It's like whatever.
You sense it out. But a lot of times it does, I think, come down to like, you look at it and it's like, oh, the art house titles or whatever. But, I don't love that definition, but I'd be lying if I didn't look at a game and kind of know, okay, this is probably an indie title based on the art direction and just the general approach.
Yeah, I think Oxenfree is a great example as well. Like Oxenfree 1, playing that at launch, like as like Oxenfree, one of my favorite games of all time. I think it's like like the gold standard in narrative, like when it comes to like themes of grief and loss and like how you handle that kind of stuff. At launch, it was pretty buggy and like crashy and like it had some issues. And I think where the benefit of Netflix comes in, like I played through Oxenfree 2 over the weekend, I had no production issues. So like I think that's where the benefit of somebody like a Devolver, an Annapurna, or a Netflix comes in. But I don't credit Netflix to like the narrative of the game or the characters or the pacing or like the art direction or anything like that. That's still Night School and that's still the indie studio, but they had some extra support for extra QA or maybe just some extra breathing room.
Right. And I think it's important too for this particular project. Oxenfree 2 was already underway by the time Night School got acquired. So I think my argument for that would be that Night School's next project would not be indie because it has been acquired by Netflix. So I find that really interesting because for me, the definition of an indie has a lot less to do with money or size of a team and more to do with, can this studio walk away and make a new project by another, or published by themselves or by another publisher? Do they have that independence to walk away and do whatever they want? Or do they have an overlord looking down and saying yes or no? Which hopefully anyone who's acquiring indie studios wouldn't be dumb enough to say like, oh, you can't uh, do this thing that you're interested in. We want you to keep, it has to be Oxenfree 3. It can't be whatever the silly next game you want to make. But I find it particularly interesting with this definition from the showcase that they almost equate not having money with creativity, which is what Janet was kind
Yeah.
of touching on, is
Yeah.
like, you are not automatically more creative because you don't have money, and you're not less creative because you have money. Like, I had a very interesting interaction with somebody who I was very excited about the Hades 2 announcement. And they were sort of arguing with me that Hades 2 shouldn't count as an indie. And I'm like, by all the definitions I've ever heard of an indie, which is where the showcase definition is kind of good, because size of the team and financial backing usually have some point in that definition. There's no reason to say Supergiant is not an indie developer. It is publishing it itself. It is making it itself. It is a small team. There's not a huge influx of cash, except they've been selling really well, so good for them. But it almost puts an indie out of the indie space if it is a mega hit, which I found really interesting, that some people consider indie games are sort of underground games and sort of synonymous with that. So if there is a mainstream level of interest in a game, it no longer gets to be indie. Like, that is such an odd thought for me. And as someone who's in the indie space a lot, I it's kind of like being a fish in water. You don't think about the water that often. And every once in a while you like run into a bird and you're like, what the heck are you talking about?
How often are fish running into birds, though, in this metaphor? I don't
Not-
mean to
not-
nitpick.
I mean, they're not
Seagulls diving in, getting the fish.
they're not going to be alive
You know
for
what?
much.
Why don't you stay on your little pedestal over there on the East Coast, and I stay over here?
My Jersey Shore
so-
water.
Yeah. Please see yourself out of the call. Thank you.
Until
Good night,
20
y'all.
seagulls descend upon you. Jenny, I really want to hear this dark pedestal of Stray. So let's hear your thoughts, but also make sure you dive back into that.
Well, the dark pedestal of Stray is more of my personal feelings just on the game as a whole and some of the
Mhm.
recognition that it's gotten. But I'll save that for maybe another, when we talk game of the year, because I think a lot of my discussion around Stray also goes into like, how are we considering game of the year? What are we thinking about? I have a lot of feelings, so we'll definitely save that for a different one.
Okay.
I think this discussion of what is indie, I mean, wow, what a thing to like bring up on this podcast is the first episode, but also for Idea Xbox be like, let's kick off our our showcase by defining this thing that like nobody's really successfully defined. I think is what a flex, I suppose, in a weird way. I think for me, I feel like being okay with ambiguity is kind of where I'm at this point, because there are so many different factors that can go into what someone would consider indie that it's almost really hard. Like, once you create the definitive statement of this is indie, like I think Janet said earlier, you can immediately counteract that with another example of how it's not. And so I
Mhm.
think becoming comfortable with either as an industry, just either saying like, hey, we're okay being flexible and like having these factors all come into play in how we determine it, or like straight up just actually committing to creating a third category of double A, triple I. If we want to just commit to that, that'd be good too. Because I think I struggle with like the definition of indie always. Because I constantly think of things that counterprove what I'm trying to define for myself. One factor that I do think is significant to me, though, is creative independence and that decision-making power, which is kind of what you were saying earlier, Jill. um, as a team, are you able to have the final call in what happens to your game, what happens within it or with its marketing and all of that? But that's tough because I also know like some publishing deals may not be the strongest, and indie teams that sign with publishers to get that support may be limited in some of that creative scope that they have. But I would still consider those games indie. So it's one of those things where it's like space where I try not to think too hard about it, because if you do, you just go into an existential crisis.
Yep.
And I also I try to think about our purpose. Like, what is, for me at least, when I'm like delineating what is indie for me, I also think about what is my purpose of calling something indie. Like, what is the point? Because the reason we name things and the reason we categorize things as humans is to like better understand what we're talking about. So for me, if I'm really wanting to focus on teams that are smaller, that are able to publish on their own, maybe with some support from other outside parties, but largely with the creative independence that I personally find indie, that's going to be indie for me, because for my purpose of highlighting these types of games in this situation, that works. But I know my situation is maybe different from what Mike wants to define as indie, and that's okay. But I know I've been very much in this realm of like, we're just gonna all be okay with ambiguity, and that's gonna have to be where we're at.
I mean,
But
that's the
I don't
answer,
know.
is that there is no answer.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
That's a
yeah.
cop-out answer, though. No, I'm just
I know.
But, like,
I know.
it is.
It's hard because I want there to be an answer so
Oh,
badly.
yeah, of course.
But I disprove myself, and I hate disproving myself because
well,
I'm like,
I
in
think
this-
there's. Yeah, no, I feel you. I think there's, multiple answers, and none of them are quite right, but none of them are quite wrong. Jenny, you mentioned near the top that you have like this love of English, and I've like studied English literature for undergrad, and I've spent a lot of time like messing with semantics and then realizing the semantics don't matter. So to Mike's point, yeah, there's no answer, and you just throw out the window, and you're just here to kind of vibe and talk and think things through. But I think also definitions change all the time, like whether it's categorizations or even just like how we use words, like I know there was that big fuss about literally now also by definition meaning figuratively. I do think there's a little bit of silliness when you become so adhere to something that like you have to abide by it no matter what, in that sense, right? Because people that would be like, oh, it's you can't say that because literally is only literally, but now it's also figuratively. So now are you going to bend your will because this book that you just determined, that you put on your own dark pedestal is the thing that you live by? Like, the truth is we all make meaning for ourselves, and things change over time. I remember being a kid and playing like games, like playing like Jack 2 was like it used to be one of my favorite games, and I replayed it and I was like, well, maybe not. But at the time, that was kind of like, and often discussed as like an open world game. Like, if that game came out today, no one would call that an open world game. It's not even close to what we think of as open world. But at the time, that kind of made sense. And, people have floated out other terms, like in this conversation, the double A, the triple I for the open world thing. There's wide linear, which never really took off, but like people, throw it out there sometimes. So I think, to Jenny's point, it's about making it meaningful in the context of what you're doing, right? If you're, we're here to highlight indie games and talk about indie games. I feel like if a few games slip through the cracks that maybe don't perfectly fit things, that can be okay, depending on what we want, what is that greater purpose. And I'm sure, Jill, you're thinking of this all the time with what games you cover on Indie Informer, because you have to be a little bit more mindful than like someone like me, where I'm usually just on shows that are more generalized. So it's like, okay, either doesn't matter, or it's there for the purposes of highlighting a game that at least is not AAA, forefront of mind, big publisher title.
Yeah, I might have this week. It's Monday. So I might have today actually had to have written an email response to a PR company reaching out to me saying like, so it's a gray area, but I think it's a little too gray for me as being like something I can cover as an indie.
Yeah.
And it's like, that hurts my soul so much, because I do want to cover games that are fun. I'm a gamer at heart, and I love all types of games, even though I love indie games the most. So having to turn things down because they're just not indie enough is really hard, because I kind of want to play them. But luckily I have someone on my team now I can like type up to and be like, hey, would you in any way consider this an indie? And then the answer is usually no. But I
You're like, sorry, they said no.
Where's the loophole?
Yeah, where can we like pretend that this is it?
That
But
was
no,
like me when
have
I requested a key for Destroy All Humans 2.
Yeah.
Like, how is this?
Or
Can
like
I make
Baldur's
this
Gate
indie?
3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a real strong response to this definition from them, because looping back to the Stray conversation that we'll loop back to later. Don't worry, I'm not going to forget it. I had such a problem with Stray being winning Game of the Year for indie, not because I didn't think, good for Stray. I had a great time, fantastic, but the reaction that most people had, that I was seeing in our industry, so people who should perhaps not be saying things like this, was that Stray deserved to win because it looked like a AAA. Kind of making the implication that the best thing an indie can be is a AAA game. And that absolutely boils my blood, because indies are so, to me, personal and like nuanced and creative and interesting, and the fact that you want to take that away and make it into it's just not, it's something that you can't do, it's something you do because you can't do the better thing, really bothers me. Does anyone ever feel that way about indies?
I mean,
Or
yeah, it's
people to
like,
think about them?
when it comes to this is kind of its own topic, but when it comes to the things like the Game Awards, like the Jeff Keighley joint, like it kind of feels like a popularity contest a little bit, where it's like, okay, because Stray, I'm looking at the nominees right now for independent game for 2022. Like Stray, Neon White, Sifu, Tunic, Cult of the Lamb, all had like, they were all on a mainstream stage at some point, whether it was a PlayStation showcase or whatever it may be. All of them had the marketing backing to really like get into the forefront of people's psyches, which, and again, all these games, I also have thoughts about Stray and I have harsh thoughts about Sifu. But for the most part, these games,
but nothing but love for Tunic, right, Mike?
Tunic's great. I'm a little too dumb for Tunic, but Tunic's great. I love Tunic so much. Like, they're all great independent video games, but because they were, it's a bit of a popularity contest, whereas like, these are the games that, like, when you think about indies in 2022, like, these are the first 5 games you will think about. Like, nobody's gonna really think about things like, I don't know, just as an example, it wasn't a 2022 game, but like my game of the year for like 2020 was Teenage Blob. Like, nobody's gonna think about Teenage Blob when you're thinking about indie games, because it didn't have a marketing push and it didn't have the backing of like going back to the ID at Xbox show. Like, it wasn't on an ID at Xbox show. So yeah, that's it feels like that sometimes when it comes to Game Awards.
I think sometimes too, for like your question of, are there like pet peeves within the industry that you have? I think sometimes people, in trying to be well-intentioned, they may inadvertently, push up against their own biases that they might not even be aware they have. And I'm sure I've been guilty of it too. But I think comments like, oh, like, it's like, it looks so good, it's like kind of like almost like it's not an indie, and it's like, that's like a little, like, what is it? When you peel that back, you kind of start to realize that I think some people's perceptions can get caught up a little bit in like fidelity or, art style or, these different aspects, or like even game length to a degree. Price is, of course, a really contentious thing in the space, because like in AAA, we don't really have to talk about that as much, like other than like season passes and sometimes like jank DLC or something like that. Sometimes like versus the free to pay model, like they have their own like tropes and issues that pop up. But the idea of, well, is it $12 or is it $20? Like, I can tell someone, and it's, everyone has their own budget, so that's fine as long as you don't, I think, impose that outwardly onto other people. But I can be like, oh, I love this game, it's like so great. It's like, well, how much is it? I'm like, oh, it's like, oh, it's $20. If it was 10, and it's like, obviously it's also their products, like, and people are going to engage with them as products. But I think more so than in other spaces, like with indie, there's so much of that hyper cost analysis a lot of times, whether it's, and that's what's cool about, ID Xbox Game Pass. It's like, you know what? Now we don't even have to talk about it. It's like, finally, we can just talk about the games themselves, because if you have that, you're already like automatically in. And that's why things like, demos and all that are good. But yeah, I think there's definitely a little bit of that issue at times, like in trying to be complimentary, you're like, it ends up being a little bit offensive. But I think that just kind of comes with, I don't know, embracing what indies are, as much as we can't define them either. So it's like this weird, like odd cyclical dance of definition and how we talk about things and what that might imply.
And I think what's interesting too, is more specifically about looking at showcases like the Game Awards, where I would say the audience of the Game Awards is probably not in tune at all with like what's really happening in the very indie space. And so for them, seeing something like a Stray or a Tunic is very like, whoa, what is this weird tiny indie game? Because contextually, I think a lot of that audience is just also much less familiar with what happens in the indie space. And so it's interesting to see also how an audience that is much more mainstream in that way, or more familiar with AAA games, approaches indie. And that is just because that's the frame of reference they have, how they're going to look at indie games, until we can provide even more ways for them to like recontextualize and reframe what they're looking at. I think, what was this, how many years ago, Hades, I think, was really interesting, because that was one that did not look necessarily AAA in terms of fidelity. It was hyper stylized in terms of its art, but it captured the attention of so many people and became, I don't know what it exactly won, but it got nominated at the very least for a lot of Game of the Year awards. And I think that's maybe one of those exceptions where you can see maybe the smattering of indie sort of coming out, but we're still also comparing almost like apples and oranges when we're talking about like an ID at Xbox audience, or even like 6-1 indie audience versus a Game Awards audience, which is like they're coming in with very different expectations.
Small potatoes in comparison to the 6-1 indie audience. Come on.
Exactly.
Obviously. Jeez. Yeah, even like with how they, like Game Awards, for example, how they do showcase indie games. I will never forget, it was whatever year Tunic finally got its release date, which was at the time a massive announcement, because we were all waiting for that release date to drop. I will never forget it dropping during the Game Awards pre-show, but it was a pre-show that was not marketed or not really announced. Like the Game Awards, like it was all marketed to like start at 7 p.m. Eastern, and the Tunic announcement came at like 6:50 p.m. and like people in the audience were still walking in. People at home, like I don't think many people were tuning into the pre-show or knew that was even happening. So I do hate, and it's a grudge I have against the Game Awards, one of my many grievances. They tend to, for lack of a better term, bury any indie announcements that they have in the pre-show. Like the pre-show that opened 2022 was the killer Dead Cells Castlevania collaboration. But like how many people who knew the Game Awards started at 8 p.m. knew to watch at 7 p.m. to catch those really cool announcements? And I think because of, and again, so deserved, again, some of the greatest games ever made, in my opinion, because of the renown that Hades received and the renown that Celeste received. That's why they were chosen for the main show. And again, it kind of goes back to that popularity contest. It's like, until you fight to make a name for yourself, and you fight fucking hard to make a name for yourself, especially like in 2023, where like Dredge is still like very much in like the sort of mainstream or Dave the Diver is a great example of this. Dave the Diver in the conversation alongside Zelda and Final Fantasy, until you could get that status, like it sucks that the mainstream is not going to pay attention or give you a shot.
Yeah, 100%.
And rant.
But at the same time, just to, on the flip side of that, I think Jenny was saying this before, like the audience is not someone who's tuned into the indie space. So this might be the first time they're ever hearing about these indies. And the fact that indies are showing up regardless is such an encouraging thing for me. I'm very excited to see these games are winning, not just in the indie space where they're like, let's just give them their own little indie, category and they can win there. Like, what was it? Disco Elysium won like every category ever, essentially. That is not a game that would have won 10 years ago or 5 years ago. So I am very excited that even if we can't define indie, that they are starting to pop up and become more prevalent and to show themselves in these bigger arenas, and maybe the Dave the Divers and all of these kind of smaller games that aren't getting these huge dredge not there are still people who haven't heard of these games, and that blows my mind, but that's because I'm a fish talking to a bird, you know? Um,
You're just a little seagull.
hey, little seagull, we can be friends. Yeah. So, talking about games like Dave the Diver, let's go ahead and go into what we are currently playing. I know Dave the Diver is on a lot of people's lists. Who has it specifically? Let's go with Jenny.
I'm playing Dave the Diver.
Tell me all about it, Jenny. What are you
Freaking
liking about Dave the
Dive
Diver?
in.
Just that was me
Dave in.
diving, just for anyone who's
Anybody
The audio
who's
listeners,
curious.
Where do
Splash.
I even start?
Yeah.
What is it? Because actually,
Okay.
I'll be honest. Like, I've been hearing Dave the Diver 6 Ways to Sunday,
okay.
and I see the key art, and someone told me there's something with sushi, and that's
Yeah.
all I know. Like, I don't know anything else actually. So, what is Dave the Diver other than the fact that I'm supposed to be playing it? Like, what am I going to be playing when I pick up the sticks?
You are going to be playing, and depending on how you feel about fishing, this may be either like a green flag or a red flag, but this is a fishing RPG. When it begins, because the game is just so flippin' phenomenal. You play initially and you're like, I'm just this guy named Dave, diving, helping out, getting some fish, and you get enlisted then to work at a sushi restaurant. So now you're fishing and you're preparing sushi. So you've got this management level of mechanics in there. The game continues to progress, and I don't want to necessarily spoil the additional mechanics that come through, but I swear I've played, I don't know, probably about 15 hours of this game so far, maybe 20, and I feel like there is a new mechanic or a new something introduced every few hours in such a way that I don't feel overwhelmed, but I'm constantly like, yeah, let's just add this genre of game mechanic in.
Mhm.
That's no big deal.
Is this the Inscription of the Sea?
No.
Okay.
Not
It's
quite.
really
No.
Yeah.
Ooh,
I would say
Okay.
I would say Dredge is the Inscription of the Sea.
Okay.
Yeah, that might
Now
be
I'm like,
fair.
I gotta finish Dredge.
Yo,
Dredge
Dredge
is-
fucking rules.
I'm partway
Dredge is
through. Yeah, it's
so
really
good.
nice.
Dredge is
This
so
is
good.
this is the year of fishing games, because now I'm realizing I've played so
Oh, yeah.
many fishing games.
Yes.
I've been
Uh,
underwater this whole time.
Blah, blah, blah. That's your whole background. You're literally your whole room is underwater.
Really is.
But no, it's basically a two-sectioned game. You start off a day fishing. So you dive into the water. You are literally it's a 2D kind of side scroller, but it's an open space of ocean where your gear and your oxygen levels count as both your health and your stamina. So you can dive down as far as it lets you, but your health will start to go down because your oxygen starts to go down, and you're trying to capture fish in the best, most pristine sort of way, a la like Red Dead Redemption 2, like how you could try to get the best animal skin or whatever. And you take all of that, and in the second part of the day, you run a sushi restaurant. So all of the fish that you've caught now goes on the menu, and you are running around serving the sushi, pouring tea. This is the most stressful part of the game to me. I don't know what that says, because in the first part, you're like shooting sharks in the face who are trying to eat you. So like the fact that that's totally fine, but trying to get someone's tea who's on the far end of the restaurant, I'm not having it. And then the money
Sharks
that
of
you
the
make
land.
from your restaurant, you can pour back into your equipment and upgrading it. And some of the best ever cutscenes.
Yeah.
Like, Jenny, do you have a favorite cutscene?
Oh man, how do I pick? I think some of my favorite. So when we are saying this has the best cutscenes, each time you either discover a new, like maybe upgrade a recipe, upgrade a weapon, you have various characters that you've met who are part of like your sushi shop, your weapons dealer. I guess. And I think my favorite is your weapons dealer when you upgrade. All of the cutscenes are very anime. Like there's no other way. It's just like it feels like you're watching just like a really over the top anime. And your weapons dealer is a fan of like J-pop basically and has these like figurines that he loves, and the upgrade animation is like he's going through not quite a magical girl transformation, but the vibe is there, and it's just
Mhm.
really outlandish and weird. And when I initially saw some of the cutscenes just in the trailer and in like gifs on Twitter, I was like, this feels like a meme game. Like this feels like this game is just going to be a joke. And you play it and it is hilarious and there are jokes to be had, but it is so deep in the way that you can customize, the way you can play. The depth is just amazing. I'm constantly surprised at how much this game has thought put into every aspect of it. It's just so good.
There's not enough thirst for the
Boncho.
chef.
I
Yeah.
love Poncho. I have
Boncho's the
Poncho theft
best.
like you wouldn't believe. Oh my gosh, with his cutscenes are my favorite because
Yeah,
he's so self-serious, and like
Oh yeah.
whenever he learns a new technique, he's like
it's art.
meditating on top of a mountain and then cutting through like a leaf in the air, and somehow that inspires him to be a better chef. I don't know, but it's great and I love it so much.
Daddy of the year, calling it now.
But yeah, this
Okay,
is
and then
definitely a must play. I would say if you have
yes.
not played it, I mean, if you go into Steam, it released in end of June, right? So it's been out for just over a month. It
1.0 at
has
least.
Yeah, it has 36,814 reviews, which is huge for an indie. Like if you're looking at number of reviews on Steam, that's phenomenal and it's overwhelmingly positive. And if you see that on any game, that's like you should definitely pick it up, especially for an indie. And I think it was in early access too, for quite some time. And I wasn't a part of it, but I almost wish I was because I would have loved to see how it evolved since the beginnings of its early access.
Yeah, and just like kudos to the team for like really being a
Oh
breakout hit, like a true
Yeah.
indie being a breakout hit, and like
yeah.
everybody is talking about it.
Yep.
100%. Good for the team.
Good for the team.
Moving on to something the three of us, me, Janet, and Mike all had on our lists of things we were playing. Oxenfree 2. I'm not going to get too deep into it because you really can't and you would spoil everything that was going on. But it is obviously the sequel to Oxenfree 1. You are sort of immediately thrown into the weird and the creepy and the eerie, as opposed to the first one where you start out pretty slow. This one immediately is in your face, like, oh, that was creepy. Um, and it just has updated art, which I love so much. You are now playing as an adult, which is really something. The more I think about this game, the more resonates with me is like when I was a teenager, I played uh, Oxenfree 1, and it is led by teenagers. And now that I am an adult, I am
Mhm.
playing as an adult in Oxenfree 2. And I wonder how much that has influenced my feelings on both games. Um, and yeah, it treads very similar territory, but at the same time, I really love what they are doing here with the narrative and with growing up and being an adult and dealing with issues as an adult versus when you're a kid. Uh, Mike, how do you feel about it?
Uh, Obviously no spoilers. Like I said earlier in the show, Oxenfree one of my favorite games of all time. I think it is the gold standard when it comes to how a game can handle themes of grief and letting go and just similar things. Um, it seems like I didn't love Oxenfree 2 as much as most people did. And I think a big part of that is because I couldn't connect with any of the characters. Like, just for some reason, like there was something about Riley and I see. I already forgot the other main character's name,
Jacob.
Jacob. Just something about Riley and Jacob that just didn't work for me. Like, I didn't believe their relationship throughout the experience. And like, granted, they are strangers like when you first start the game. But yeah, like between the two protagonists and the rest of the supporting cast, I think there are way too many characters in the game. I think that kind of was a detriment to it as well. It's just like, yeah, I had a hard time just kind of like latching on to everything. As a video game, I think it is a better video game than Oxenfree 1 as far as production goes, as far as like the art direction goes, the pacing, a lot of like there's the gameplay stuff as far as like you can move faster and um like you could choose the dialogue option and you're not cutting another person off. You could continue dialogue through screens as you're loading. I think all that stuff is brilliant. I think the map is, I know like a lot of people like Greg,
Oh,
for example, like love the map compared to 1. I think the map is so
Mhm.
much more overwhelming and like hard to navigate. And I
oh, I
just
love the map.
I recently replayed 1 right before 2. And I think it
Uh-huh.
was like, yeah, I just feel like I felt like I was almost lost at all times. Um, but yeah, it just didn't really hit for me. And there's some spoiler stuff that like kind of not like irked me or anything, but I'm just like, I question the choices behind it. But yeah, we could talk about that another time. I think I know I sound negative. I think it was good. And I'm stoked that like so many people adore it. And that's only means
Right.
like that's only good for Night School and their next project, and hopefully Netflix giving them freedom to do whatever they want. But yeah, it was just
Like
like kind of like, okay, that was a
on
weekend.
on the vein of what you're saying, I will say the only way I can say this without spoiling anything is like when I made a decision, I was never ever questioning what that decision was going to be. I never was like, "Oh, should I do this?" Should I went into a decision. I'm like, "Yep, that's my decision,"
Yeah,
and I'm 100% not struggling with it. I'm 100% okay with the decision that I have made, and I know that the game is trying to make me think about the repercussions and implications of the things that I am choosing to do. But I'm like, no, no, I'm good. So
yeah.
that's
It felt like there was more weight to the choices in the first game, whereas
what do you
like,
think, Janet?
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know which one I like more. It's very much a Last of Us 1, 2 question where
sure,
it's like, well, this one's technically better, but then the other one has like the nostalgia and like the rough edges maybe were like more interesting in the first. So I think the second one is better than the first one in some ways, but also worse in others. I land a bit hotter than Mike does. I think this is a great game. I think it's one of my favorite narrative experiences of the year. I struggle to think of another narrative experience that is competitive with it, but I obviously still have a lot of games left to play, and there's still more coming out. So, I don't know if I'm going to be moved under the seas of Dave the Diver, and when I finally finish Dredge, which I've been really enjoying the time I did spend with that. But yeah, Oxenfree 2, I think it's interesting because this is kind of the beauty of criticism. I agree with a lot of what Mike has said, but I have like a different just interpretation of it or a feeling walking away from it where I get why you didn't connect with the cast as much because it is definitely like it's a different context, right? They're adults, they're like just meeting each other, and there's not as much like spice and drama as Oxenfree 1. Oxenfree 1, again, without spoiling either of the games, was a lot of like I'm here with my friends, but it's like a friend group in high school where it's like I'm friends with that one person, but I'm kind of not really friends with this person, and like this person kind of hates me actually because of this other thing, and I hate them for hating me, and then it's like, do you save them? And I'm like, oh man, like, and so you do have more drama due to the nature of the age group, the issues they have, the fact that there is like a group of teenagers. Well, this one, while it has other characters, I guess it's in a way, it's what there's people on the radio, like you kind of can sense there's more than just the two characters. While there's other people, it's not like involved in the same way because you're like meeting them. And I think the way it deals with like the emotional weight of things is a lot more removed. But to me, I felt like that was authentic to the situation they're in as adults, where it's like you have these traumas, but you're not exactly like in the first game, you play as Alex, and she is very sleeves rolled up in the trauma, and the game puts you in trauma, and you're like facing it. It's right in front of you. Here, it's like you'll get like pieces and glimpses, and just kind of the dance of what are these other relationships you have? How do you feel about yourself? Who are you up until now? Has a little bit more mystery, has a little bit more detachment, and more of a, I think, acceptance that I personally find comes with age a lot of times, where it's like you just have a different relationship to those things than you would as a child sorting through them. So I really liked how it just kind of was an examination of other things, but I do think in turn, it's a little less juicy, a little less dramatic because you are kind of coming in, and it plays a lot like Oxenfree 1. So like art aside, if I showed you, like I could show you something happening in Oxenfree 2 and I could sell it as happening in Oxenfree 1 because they have a lot of similar mechanics and imagery. Again, that said, I really loved it. Fun, spooky adventure, incredible sound design,
Oh my God,
immersive
yeah.
atmosphere. And while I didn't really struggle with many of the decisions, one of the ones that you make towards the end, I really struggled with and really thought about what I was going to end up doing. And again, it's going to come down to the player because I talked to Greg, who also loved the game, and he was like, "Oh, I knew exactly what I was doing. Like I just did. I picked this person or I picked this thing, and I just did it." And I'm like, "Wow, like." This person really just doesn't care about other people. Okay.
Without-
No, that's just me.
Without
Like,
spoiling
sorry,
anything.
I have a heart. No, okay.
Without spoiling anything, are you referring to like the second to last big decision or the last big decision?
I don't know what that
Probably
means.
the last one, I think. Because the second to last one, I felt, and again, this is very vague, but I felt informed by, I felt like it was an information-based decision for me. And I don't even know if we're talking about the same thing, I'll be honest. I'm
Probably
kind
not,
of
to be
assuming
honest,
that we are.
but- yeah.
No, probably not at all. But, you know, it's like informed by information. Well, I think in the other game, you're making a lot of smaller decisions and you are having like a greater effect on the world in some ways, or like, you know, again, hard to talk about it without spoiling it, but still really enjoyed it, loved it a lot, big fan of it. But Oxenfree, all of Night School's games have always been mixed reviews, all of them. Oxenfree 1, Oxenfree 2, After Party, which After Party I don't like, but you know, people are always like, there are some people that are like, this is awesome, and then some people were like, I didn't really like it, and like, you know, no one's necessarily right. It's just that just seems to be something about the way they approach design, whatever. Like, it tends to have a splintered audience, despite obviously the people reviewing it are either fans of the studio, fans of the genre, you know, theoretically are familiar with what's going on, but it just seems to hit people different ways.
And as
100%.
hallmarky as it sounds, that's the cool thing about Night School, that they could elicit different reactions from a wide range of audiences, and that's fascinating.
As much as they were like, I just want everyone to love us, probably,
course.
right? Like, but, you know?
Yeah, I'm sure they would want 10 out of 10s across the board, but I do really love that there are people who go in who have all of these different views, and they're not, everyone's right. You know, that's the cool thing.
I know. I wish it was. That's I guess one of the cons of when it is a smaller, you know, game, whether you want to count it as indie or not. Like, it's secretly one of the most contentious games, but like we're never really going to have that full on discussion because like not enough people are aware or care enough to have it. You know what I mean? Versus like, again, a more popular game that has more eyes on it. People will debate whether or not Red Dead Redemption 2 is a good game or whatever, or like whatever title, right? Maybe something more contentious than RDR2, but. This is like, oh man, there's some interesting stuff here, but like we're never really going to get the full content because it's just not at the top of mind in the same way. But it's, you know, it's on Netflix, it's on console. I encourage people to check it out if they're interested in it.
Yeah,
100%.
This is definitely Netflix's like next big series after Stranger Things, right? Like they're making a fucking show out of this. and
It's so interesting that like it is Stranger Things, and it came out right before, like 6 months before Stranger Things season 1 was Oxenfree 1.
Like they're just going to reuse all those assets from Stranger Things,
right?
Like, and it's gonna be a fucking
Just
banger.
drag and drop.
Yeah, exactly. Put Vecna in there, make him a weird ghost creature. It's fine.
I like that reference. Thank you. Moving on, we're probably going to start wrapping up, but I do want to touch on Viewfinder, which I know Jenny and I both have on our lists. I rolled credits and my review is up, so you can check that out. But just to sort of elevators pitch on how I feel about this game, this is probably one of the most creative puzzle games that I have played in a while. I don't know if the narrative works as strongly, but it does enough to get you from puzzle to puzzle, and the puzzles are like, they are elegant. They are simple. I used a phrase, it was something like, they're always simple but rarely easy. And that is such a good place for a puzzle game to be. Do you feel the same way, Jenny?
Yeah, for a little bit of context, I am not done with it. I feel like I'm about halfway done. So I'm going to be finishing it up probably in the next day or so, but so far my experience pretty much matches yours. I think I have not played a puzzle game that has been this awe-inspiring in a long time, where I truly, the way that they for context, I guess, Viewfinder is a game where you use photographs to essentially manipulate reality. So you can place photographs, you can take photographs, and as you move them around, you can either step into the pictures essentially, or use them to change the world around you and how you perceive the world around you. And I have spent so much time just playing with taking pictures and doing things to the world, because I'm constantly in awe of how it's just doing things that make my brain bend. I think they even have like, this is a mind bending first person puzzle game. And I was like, sure, mind bending. Okay. Like everyone puts something like that in their marketing speak. Is this really mind bending? Yes. I think this is one of
Mhm.
those games that actually does follow through on that promise. I'm not, since I haven't finished the story yet, I can't speak to how satisfying it is. At the moment, I wish there was a little bit more, because it's like tantalizing me, but not totally gripping me. But we'll see what happens at the end. But I'm really enjoying my experience. I think this is a solid puzzle game for sure. Probably one of my favorites of the year so far.
Yeah, 100%. Just the fact, it's one of those things that people talk about with Tears of the Kingdom, just the fact that the design stuff works is
Mhm.
incredible, and it works throughout, and I've never had a problem with it. It works exactly like it's supposed to, and it is just freeing in the ability to play. I can't wait for this to come out and like have people who are much smarter than me play this game, because I want to see how they do things and like break the world, or no, it's going to be amazing. I love it. Janet, Mike, have either of you? Yes, Mike, you raising your hand. Thank
Jill,
you.
thank you. Jill, you know me well enough by now, and I asked you this when we previewed it on IndieCast.
Mhm.
Am I too stupid for this game?
No.
You sure?
The only way like, the funny thing about the only time I
Didn't say
ran
yes.
into real problems
Yep. Oh, I heard that.
the only reason I ran or the only time I ran into real problems solving the puzzles is when I was getting too into my own head,
Hmm.
and I didn't just step back and be like, "Oh, of
But
course."
that's what I
It's
do.
Yeah,
That's my
I do have
problem.
my head up
You
my own ass quite a bit.
I will say
Yeah.
there were a couple puzzles where I sat there and I definitely got to the point where I was like, I think I'm an idiot. Like I'm just an idiot, and this has proven it. Where there was like one instance where I just like I cheesed it so hard, but whatever. I solved the puzzle where I just like copy and pasted the same picture over and over and over and over again to just like cheese my way to the end point that
Yeah.
you needed to the puzzle. I was like,
Sounds about right.
this is not what they
I
want
feel
me
like
to
I did
do.
that in the demo,
Yeah.
and like in front
in
of the
the
developers at Summer Game Fest.
in the demo there is a solution like that. So you did it right.
Yes.
But
Okay. Because I
yeah,
felt like I
there's
was not doing
it's
it.
one of those things where it's like I'm sitting there and I'm like, in the entire like, up until this point, I have learned to take this thing and put it at this thing,
Hmm.
and that's how they've trained me to do it. And then at some point in like the second back half of the game, the solution is to take the thing and put it over by the thing instead. And it's like that level where it's like, oh, I was so in my own head. I was creating worlds within worlds and like trying to find some way to do it. I was like, oh, it was so easy. I just had to bring the thing the opposite instead of bringing the thing to the thing. I know that that's not helpful for anybody because that's just a bunch of
No,
things,
you
but
made
I've
my
been hearing though.
you made my decision for me. I'm too dumb.
No, I've been
no.
hearing from a lot of people because I'm also fellow dumb here, right? It's like I love puzzle games, but it takes me a long time. Like my partner was watching me play Superliminal. I forgot if we were doing it back and forth. I think we were like UT takes a puzzle or whatever. Like I think we both kind of played it together, and it was like my turn with the sticks, and it's like, all right. And he's like watching. I just know I'm like, I wonder what you're supposed to be doing here. Because all I know is it's just me and this rubber duck in a room and I don't know what to do, But I work through it. I can do most stuff, at the end of the day. And I've heard from a lot of people that Viewfinder is very much like achievable complexities. So I'm looking forward to digging into it. I was supposed to get to it by now, but it was one of those things where like, it's one of those review codes just burning a hole in my pocket. And hopefully by the next time we talk, I'll have beaten it, hopefully, because it's a fairly short game. It's a couple hours. So I plan to kind of beam through it in the next like day or two. But yeah, I always love these games. You know, big fan of Maquette, big fan of Superliminal. Of course, who isn't a big fan of Portal, right? Sorry, there's a fly in my apartment. So yeah, I'm looking forward to checking out the full thing and seeing where it takes me. I will say, playing the demo too, like at SGF, like I was like solving stuff, and the team member was like, "Oh yeah, see, you figured it out. You're doing good." And I'm like, "I saw this happen in the trailer that I've watched 82 times. I didn't know to make it a bridge. Okay, I just copy and pasted it over."
No, it is not a busy work puzzle game, which I deeply appreciate. It is, for the most part, if you see the answer, you can solve the puzzle in a matter of seconds usually. Like, it's not a huge intricate thing.
I don't want to spoil it, and obviously I know we're running long on time, but can you talk at all about the story? Because that's actually not something I got a sense of from like the trailers, from the demo. I feel like that's always such a contentious point of games like this. Like, is there stories that, you know, what can you speak to that at all? I mean, Jill, I know you mentioned that it didn't really end up paying off for you, but can you allude to what is the setup of it?
I'm gonna do something mean to Jenny in a minute, but anybody who doesn't want to hear story spoilers can tune out for just a second. Essentially, and something really cool, it's kind of like time travel almost, because you are playing as a person who is dealing with like late stage climate change in a very dramatic way, and you see that for a moment.
So we're us.
And you are I mean, there was a moment that really pushed me back to the pandemic. Like, I think everybody remembers those couple of days where the sky was a different color.
Yeah, I do remember that. I sound 80 years old now, but I remember.
So it hit me real hard to kind of see this world, but you see it for a second, and then the reason you're going through all of these puzzles is because you believe at the end of this journey there is some sort of thing that will be able to help with your current world. And this is the research of people long gone. They're all dead. You've discovered this research. You're hoping that it'll get you to the point where you're going to be able to help. None of that ever really hits on a resonating level. It is interesting enough to move the story forward, but it's like I don't get a lot of time. I don't see a lot of the results of that happening. I don't have an emotional tie to that. But Jenny, how do you like Kate?
Wait, sorry, you cut out for me. What was it?
How do you like Kate?
I honestly don't feel like I know Kate well enough to even say, at the point of the game that I'm at, I don't feel like that's the thing. Like, I think I'm not connected to.
Do you pet Kate?
Yeah.
Do you pet Kate enough? Yeah. Because it was.
Is Kate that weirdo looking cat that's there?
Cat.
I already love that cat. What's gonna happen? Why does this cat? This cat is.
It was my
the devil, or what?
Every time that I saw the cat, I would pet the cat because that would obviously give me luck.
I don't feel like, I don't know, maybe because Kate shows up as like striped, like not as like a full cat.
Yeah,
which
also that's the best part.
It's like a cheese grated cat.
I don't know. That's for me. I'm like
a shredded chunk.
A shredded cat. Yeah.
Why are they not leading this in the marketing push?
So the highest narrative moment of the game for me involved Kate. And I will say, that's all I'll say.
I gotta say, until Janet...
So this cat's definitely dead, right?
I know, like...
Until Janet clarified Kate was a cat, I was like, oh, we're petting humans in this game?
At first I did think Kate was like a person, like a human being. And then okay. And then I was like, maybe not.
And then Mike's like, now I'm interested. So running just real quick, we're
that's the right response.
What other things do you want to shout out? Give us a quick rundown of the things you are playing.
Shout out to Goobies.
Jenny. No. Oh, Goobies. Yeah, hit us. What's Goobies?
What's
Goobies is just a blobby survivors. Like you're playing as, according to the Steam page, you're playing as, where is it? A champion of a diverse cast of 5 Goobies. There's little blobby boys. They're very wiggly. They're very woogly. Some of the cast includes Dizzy Wizzy, Bingus Bongus, Wiggle Woggle. And it's just
Okay.
and it's Vampire Survivors, but except it's it's very shiny. It's very blobby. I know I just keep saying blobby.
You
'cause I
love
don't know how-
blobs because you have the I Am a Teenage blob too. Are you like
Yeah.
chasing down these blob-like games? Is this like a thing? A new
Maybe
lane?
that'll be a feature coming down the line.
Blob-like.
Top 5 blobs of all time. But yeah, it's a typical auto fire Vampire Survivors like kind of game where you're just doing waves on waves of attacking folks. But what kind of like sets it apart? First off, the aesthetic and the sound design is just so satisfying. It's just nice little like kind of noises, and it's just like ASMR. It's great with headphones. But it does a thing where once in a while a boss will come in. When you defeat the boss, like a big wheel pops up where it'll say like times 1, 2, or 3, and then it'll have all of your current abilities on the other end of the wheel, so you have the opportunity to amplify one of your abilities. And as you do certain in-game actions, you will unlock, I think they're called artifacts. So you could they're like essentially gameplay modifiers, where the first one I unlocked is that I could actually, like, with the right thumbstick, I could choose where I want to aim. So it plays more like a 20 Minutes Till Dawn, for example, versus a Vampire Survivors. And there's like, it feels like there's like at least 30 of those modifiers just like hidden throughout the game. And then, the characters themselves are similar to Vampire Survivors. Each character has a different weapon and different ability, different fire rate. I just unlocked who is it? Sprinkly Winkly, I think. He has a great he has a great, just like, it's slower, but it's more like a kind of like grenade launcher kind of attack that kind of just wipes out a lot of the
Do you have a
Goobies.
sound effect for Sprinkly Winkly for us?
a lot of like blip, blop, blip, blop, like one of those, because he has very long
Thank you.
legs. He's the Slender Man of the Gooby universe, the Goobyverse, if you will.
Okay, good to know. I'll stay away from him.
Um,
Janet, do you have a quickfire you want to shout out?
Not really. I did just get a Steam Deck, so I'm looking to
Ooh.
sink some hours into that.
Hell yeah.
So
Okay. Dave the
that's
Diver.
my shout out. Yeah, Dave the Diver. I want to get back into pursuing potion craft, which I've been playing really heavily, like on and off. And I just want to shout out looking at Goobies, because who's the last guy? Sprinkly Winkly, right? Is that who's...
Janet, there's so many classic characters. There's Dizzy Wizzy, there's Bingus Bongus, there's Sprinkly Winkly, there's Wiggle Woggle.
So looking at it, like, it is so hard to tell what is a creature and what is like an environmental asset, and that really speaks to me. So I think I might have to add this to the list.
Janet,
There's a demo on Steam too.
There's the demo, but it will be the best $4.79 you ever.
I was looking at that
Yeah,
too.
I
Yeah, I'm like, it's
noticed
pretty cheap.
Mike selling hard. Jenny, do you have
Goobies
a
Nation.
quickfire?
Yeah. I'm replaying recently a game called Mr. Saito. Super short.
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, yeah.
games.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Little wiggle dogs.
This is like the only podcast where you can name drop Mr. Saito and everyone's like, oh yeah,
Oh, shit.
yeah.
100%.
So
Fair.
good.
Yeah, I've hit that up a little bit, a little look at office culture.
Yeah, exactly. I love that so much. For folks who are unfamiliar, it's really short, like 2-hour, maybe 3-hour game where you play a salaryman in Japan who is going through a bit of a work-life balance crisis, trying to find meaning in life. Is somehow transported into a world of llama worms and like giant birds and fantasy, and it's a really lovely experience. If you are familiar with the game Rakuin, it's by the same developer. It's set in the same universe. It's just really charming and good. Not meant to be challenging in terms of like mechanics. You just go through the story, maybe shed like a little tear at the end because you're going to feel emotions, and it's great. That's my quick shout out.
Absolutely love it. I'm gonna cheat because I'm master of ceremonies. I can do that. I've got 3. I want to shout out Sticky Business, which Mike tells me I need to
Yeah.
disclose. It is his PR company is covering them, but it is really great, and I was not influenced in any way by him. Let's Revolution. It's a
Yes.
Is it upsetting to hear as a PR
roguelike?
person that you didn't have any influence on this decision?
Yeah, it's like that awkward moment where
I want to be
just have
clear,
I
Mike's
stay
work,
silent.
meaningless here. Did nothing
Hey,
for me.
Sticky
Actually deterred
Business.
me from the game.
Sticky Business, not my account, so technically I had nothing to do with it.
Nothing to do with it. It's a good game. I played it for way too long. I expected to get in for 5 minutes, and I was just like, "Oh, this is the best sticker I've ever made." Yeah,
I'm
and then
thinking about getting a
Gunbrella,
printer because of sticky business because I want to print my stickers.
right? They're so good. Gunbrella, there's a preview coming out at the time of recording, embargoed information. Congratulations, everyone. But by the time I post this tomorrow morning at like 9, I believe is the embargo date. So I got a preview, an extended preview on Gunbrella, and this is an absolutely fantastic game. I'm so
Hell
excited to
yeah.
play this. So
Fuck yeah.
everyone who's looking forward to that should be still looking forward to it.
Can I
And that is-
share an industry secret compared in relation to Gumbrella?
I would love to hear it.
The developer
Your umbrella is also a gun.
exclusive.
What?
Yeah.
I forgot the main the creative director's name, but the main dude at Doing Soft,
Mhm.
the voice of Volvi.
Oh yeah, I love
Wow.
Volvi. Yeah.
That was a secret shared at the completionist office after many beers.
Mm.
Anybody who's not up to date with their Volvi stuff, he was most recently seen, though he was a beloved character throughout all of our childhoods. Most recently seen at the Devolver Digital Showcase. And with that note, that's the end of this week's council. We made it, everybody. Thank you for joining me. Thank you, everyone who joined us for this particular council episode. Counselors, where can everyone find you, Mike?
Oh damn! I don't know. They're all like 12 social media networks at the,
I
at the
was
moment.
get,
Oh
yep,
my
go ahead.
gosh. Yeah.
Mhm.
Twitter and Blue Sky, I am at It's Mike Town. Threads, I'm at It's Mike Towndrow because some scumbag has the other one.
Ooh.
And at 61indie on all social media platforms, youtube.com/61indie. We are currently in pre-production for our next mini indie showcase, which is airing for everybody on August 31st. I'm flying to New York next week to give Kyle Stevenson a big hug and film it. I am biased. It's a banger. Tune in. Get
I bet
hyped.
it's going to be. Jenny, where can we find you?
Oh gosh, now it's my turn to keep track of the accounts. I would say best place, Twitch, YouTube, and TikTok. I'm at Kimchika. Twitter, I'm at Kimchika25. And I think everywhere else I'm at Kimchika actually. So yeah, Threads, Blue Sky, skeetin', tootin', doing all that stuff. Who knows?
And Janet,
Yeah.
where can we find you?
I'm under the handle Gameonysus. That's Game ONYSUS on everything. That's Twitter, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Blue Sky, YouTube, Twitch, and whatever else comes out. You know, Blibbity Blop or whatever is going to be dropped by the time. Yeah, I don't know. I'm on stuff that no one's even. I'm on Lemonade, like under Gameonysus. I posted like maybe one photo or none.
Mhm.
Catch me on BoopyNet.
Yeah. Get into it. You know.
Yeah. And as for me, you can find me at theindieinformer.com. It's the easiest place to find everything that I'm writing for socials. Me personally, it's going to be at Finruin, FINRUIN. And you can follow the Indie Informer usually at the Indie Informer, easily enough. So that's going to do it. This session is closed, but go play some indies, everybody.
Yay.
Also, can we get
outro,
robes for this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh,
Everyone has
yes,
to
please.
reveal themselves when they introduce.
Yeah, like a cloak or something. Like, I don't know. A gavel. It feels like it needs.
Yeah,
we
we need
a cloak
gavel.
of some
yeah.
A
form.
gavel for the
Mhm.
dark pedestal, yeah.
Yeah.